You know, what if the biggest challenge in parenting isn't about finding the perfect technique, but about changing one simple thought? Today, we're going to dive into the wisdom of master trainer Nafi K. We're going to explore a mindset shift that could literally redefine the relationship you have with your children. Let's get right into it.
And that shift? Well, it all starts with this massive, fundamental question. Why are we even raising our children in the first place? Sounds so simple, right? But believe me, your answer to this one question shapes every single interaction, every decision, and ultimately, the outcome.
So, on one side, you've got this traditional view, parenting as a heavy duty, an obligation, an investment that we hope pays off when we're old. And honestly, that path is often just paved with frustration. But then, there's this other view, seeing it as an incredible opportunity, a chance to nurture the future leaders, the innovators, the people who are going to shape our world. That's a huge difference. And that brings us right to the core idea from Nafi K. Think about it. When you see parenting as a duty, every little challenge feels like a burden. But the moment you reframe it as an opportunity, every moment, even the really tough ones, suddenly has a purpose.
Okay, so here's the game plan for our chat today. We're going to start with that big mindset shift. Then we'll get practical and see how to apply it through the 3 key stages of childhood. We'll talk about the real power of connection, navigate this tricky world of parenting the techie generation, and then, finally, we're going to turn the spotlight back on the most important person in this whole equation, you.
All right, let's really dig into this first big idea, shifting your core mindset from a heavy obligation to an exciting opportunity. So, what does this opportunity mindset actually look like? Well, it completely reframes your role. You're not just raising a future caretaker for yourself. No, you're a facilitator, a guardian, entrusted with raising a valuable contributor to the world. And when you let go of that expectation of getting something back, you're free to parent from a place of just pure generosity and love. It changes everything.
Okay, so you've got the mindset down, but what does it look like in practice, day to day? Well, our approach has to change as our kids grow, which brings us to these 3 very distinct stages of childhood.
Nafi K lays out this really beautiful evolution of our job as parents. So from birth to age 7, it's all about one thing, play. That's where you build that deep foundation of security. Then from 7 to 14, your role shifts. You become a teacher, a guide, you start imparting values. And finally, from 14 to 21, you transition into your final and maybe most important role, their trusted friend and confidant.
Now, that first stage, from 0 to 7, this is what psychologists call the imprinted time, and it is absolutely critical. I mean, every word you say, every look you give them, every action, it's all being permanently etched into their developing brain, like carvings in stone. This is the foundation of who they're going to become, and it is so hard to change later on.
Okay, but I know what you're thinking. What about discipline during these early years? If they're misbehaving, you have to punish them, right? That's how they learn. Or is it?
Well, not so fast. For a punishment to actually work, to be effective, 2 things absolutely have to be true. First, the child has to know that what they're doing is wrong. And second, they have to be doing it on purpose. So think about a 3-year-old who won't eat their dinner. Are they being malicious, or are they just not hungry? Punishing them in that moment is useless, because those 2 conditions, they just aren't met.
So even though our role changes through these stages, there's one thing that's constant, the one thing that has to stay strong, and that's connection. So let's talk about the 2 currencies of connection that really matter at any age.
Let me ask you a question, and be really honest with yourself, especially if you have older kids. Do you still hug them? It's such a simple question, but man, the answer can reveal a whole lot about the state of your connection. You see, Nafi K says that all of us as human beings, we share 2 fundamental hungers. The first is the hunger for touch. A simple hug can literally melt away stress. It doesn't matter if you're 7 or 17. And the second one, which is just as important, is the hunger for recognition, that deep need to be seen and respected as an individual. This quote just illustrates that hunger for recognition so perfectly. The advice is, when your child grows as tall as you should start to address them with more formal respect. Now, it's not really about the specific word, it's about the symbol. It's a powerful signal that you see them as becoming an equal, and it shifts the whole relationship from one of authority to one of deep, mutual respect.
But of course, keeping that connection strong today, it comes with a challenge that no generation of parents before us has ever had to face. And that's bridging this huge digital divide. Let's think about it this way. Our kids, they're digital natives. They were born speaking the language of technology fluently. It's their first language. But us? We're digital immigrants. We had to learn this language later in life. So we just can't expect them to see the world through the same lens we do. It's impossible.
But here's the really fascinating thing. This generation is incredibly open. I mean, they are willing to talk about things we would never have dreamed of discussing with our parents. But the second we bring judgment into the conversation, bam, that door slams shut. The only way to build that bridge across the digital divide is through open, honest, heart-to-heart communication. No judgment allowed.
And that brings us to our final, and you know what, maybe the most important section of all. Because the real foundation of great parenting, it doesn't start with your child. It starts with you.
At its very core, love is about understanding. And that journey of understanding, it can't start with them. It has to start with us. What are your triggers? What makes you angry? How does your stress ripple through the house and affect everyone? This kind of self-awareness, it's not selfish. It's the absolute first step to becoming a better parent.
Look, the truth is, you just can't pour from an empty cup. It's impossible. So many parents, and especially mothers, feel so guilty taking any time for themselves. But your well-being, it's not an indulgence. It is the fuel that powers your entire family. Making time for yourself isn't selfish. It is absolutely essential.
Let's use a really powerful, practical example of this. When your teenager comes home late, what's the first emotion you feel? It's fear, right? Pure terror. But what do we usually show? Anger. Just imagine the difference if instead of yelling at them, you said, "I was so scared, I was so worried something terrible happened to you." See? One response builds a wall. The other one builds a bridge. So, we'll end with this one powerful introspective question for you to chew on. You don't have to be a perfect role model in every part of your life. Nobody is. But can you find just one area? Maybe it's your honesty or your work ethic or your kindness to strangers. Just one area where you can confidently, proudly look at your child and say, "In this, be like me." That pursuit of your own personal excellence, that might just be the greatest gift you can ever give them.